Hello, welcome everyone to yet another episode of the Unsecurity Podcast. This is number 2 in our CISSP Meet the Mentor Program. Today we have Ron Woerner on. Ron, thank you for joining us.
Great to see you, Brad, and great to be a part of this awesome group mentoring and then participating in the FRSecure CISSP Mentor Program. Always a lot of fun.
This will be my 7th year teaching.
Wow.
Which, blows my mind. This will be your third?
Third or fourth.
Yeah.
After a while, you lose track. But the thousands of lives we get to impact is why I'm jazzed about doing it. Helping others build their knowledge, build their careers.
I fully agree. So before we go into that too deep, I did want to hit two kind of stories that are top of mind right now. Obviously, the big one, I think, over the last couple of weeks has been the Change Healthcare and the impact to pharmacies and people being able to just get prescriptions. What are your initial thoughts on that? What is your takeaway from this?
Often comes back to fundamentals. And I know Evan Francine and the rest of us often mention this. It's just having those incident response plan, run books in place, particularly for those who may not be focused on cybersecurity. Too often, like a pharmacy is just thinking, well, cyber is something outside. We just, dole out medication.
Right.
But no, really, it's what everybody needs to do. And you need to have plans in place. What if I can't take someone's money, or what if insurance isn't working? Knowing how to handle that, not having to learn after the fact, which gets to be very ineffective, but very problematic, particularly for the consumer. Poor folks who are just trying to get their medication and can't.
Stories of a prescription that normally costs them $10 or $15 a month is $250 a month. I mean, that's real people being impacted.
Yes.
And,
And I wonder, because I was just also reading a story about like $12.5 billion for U.S. Consumers being affected by cybercrime last year. Quite a few through other means besides what happened with the healthcare. But what I'm wondering is, are we going to begin to see more and more regulation around it?
It's funny you said that, because I was going to say this is how you get more regulation. When there's something that is this impactful for so many people. It's different when it's like isolated and you don't feel it. But once you start, especially from a politician, once your constituents start complaining, that's when things tend to happen.
Exactly. That and insurance. I mean, we're already seeing problems with insurance, but I go back and I look at the automobile industry. I see what we're doing in cyber, similar track as where we were 75 years ago. People dying in car accidents. Now, what really affected change? It was as much raising people's insurance.
Yeah.
And also pushing it back on manufacturers. That's something we heard from Jen Easterly of CISSP within the last year. Her plan is pushing back to those who
Secure
are providing. Yes. So that's where, like the Change Healthcare and the others, we've seen this in the past with credit reporting agencies. It's costing them many hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So when cybersecurity hits in the pocketbook. So for those who are learning cybersecurity, this is why I encourage study finance and accounting, because cybersecurity is as much a technical problem as it is a financial one.
Well, and we've talked about it, but that if you study finance and accounting, you're to speak the business's language, and that's so critical. The other thing with the Change Healthcare is they apparently paid $22 million ransom, and then Black Cat was like, bye.
They've done it before, though. They did it with the Colonial Pipeline.
But now they're saying the affiliates still have all the data.
Right.
And so now you're like, the affiliates are going, hey, time out. We didn't get our cut. We have all your information. Like, this is why don't trust the thieves.
No. Exactly, on the dark web, if you ever hang out there. It's just fascinating to watch, just to lurk, but seeing what's happening underneath it all. But I do know our FBI is diligently working to try to prevent it. But again, it comes back to having that playbook. What happens if you get ransomware? I mean, Brad, how long have we been dealing with ransomware? It's a new thing, right?
Oh yeah, like last week maybe,
Oh yeah,
right? Yeah, no.
over
Oh,
a decade. So why organizations don't have a strict playbook? When we get ransomware, this is what we do. Under these circumstances, we may pay, but this way, it's not a knee-jerk
right.
reaction. That may or may not have happened
It,
here.
yeah, it blows my mind still, like
Yes,
how much it's this. It's the same stuff now as it was 20 years ago. Like,
yes,
okay, so maybe technically a little bit different, but it's still. Do you have policies? Do you have procedures? Do you have
hmm
documentation? Do you have your backups? Have
yes.
you tested the back? Like, it hasn't changed.
Nope. We call it Security Groundhog Day. Repeating the same day over and over again.
Uh, Speaking of Groundhog Day, the latest high severity
hmm
critical is Cisco's VPN. Just came out with
Yes.
two high severity, and again, well, gosh, guess what? Those are going to be internet facing because it's a VPN. So
hmm
if you have the Cisco VPN client, make sure you get those patched. We've seen it. I mean, we could spend an hour on just 0 days on in the last couple of weeks,
Right.
but
Oh, yes.
like
It's
that one's
again having that plan in place. Your internet facing software is going to need to be patched. There are going to be 0 days against it. You don't know
right,
what they are now. So it
right,
shouldn't be a surprise when Cisco says, okay, emergency patch. Same thing with whether it's Cisco, Microsoft, you name
yeah.
it. They're going to have this in the future.
Well,
So, and
yeah,
make
we
sure you have the redundancy in personnel. I've seen too many small organizations,
yes,
Brad, where, yeah, it's the one person who knows how to patch and they're not here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody had a baby, they're out. They're not answering their
Yes.
phone because guess what? You can't really, if they're on maternity leave, there's not a whole lot you can do.
No, no.
But
Call them back in for that. But yeah, I mean, so it's just be ready, stay vigilant is
yes,
the key. And again, have your plan in place and know how to work with your user base as well to tell them. And this is also why we're encouraging more and more zero trust network access,
yeah,
less reliant on the VPN as the sole gateway in. So this
right.
way, each application is considered its own and has its own what's known as a policy enforcement point. So,
Yeah.
but even there, you can end up with a potential single point of failure.
Well, and unfortunately, how many companies are even close to being ready for that when they're
Right?
like we were talking, they're missing the basics. You can't
Yes.
get to zero trust if you don't have asset management, if you don't have network diagrams, data flow diagrams.
Yep.
There's just so many things that go into that.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So let's talk about something a little bit more fun and positive
Yeah.
here. So let's talk about you.
Oh,
Like we talked about a little bit. This is your third or fourth time teaching. At this point, it all kind of blends together. After the
yes.
first class, you kind of just go, "Whoa, what hit me?" Um, so, what got you involved in wanting to help teach? What are you
Mhm.
doing? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, yeah, thank you. For those who don't know me, well, first of all, please follow me on LinkedIn. I only post what I think are somewhat interesting topics. Been part of the security community for well over 20 years. I've actually had my CISSP since 2001, so going on 23 years now. So yes, earned all of the gray hairs as a part of this, but I'm passionate about helping to build our community. I'm actually a lifelong learner. And what I've learned is that I almost learn better by teaching someone else at this point. And it helps me to remember, again, as we talked about earlier, Brad, those fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Too easy to get caught up in the flash of AIML and LLMs, because that's going to solve all of our cybersecurity issues if you don't
Right.
know it. No, just I'm passionate about helping people. So I've worked multiple Fortune 200 companies, government agencies, teaching for a university, and then helping to mentor CISSP as part of our group.
Yes. And you've been involved with ISC Squared, who does the CISSP as well, correct?
Oh, yes.
Are you still working with them?
Yes, I'm part of their North American Advisory Committee. We are a group of folks who just get together and we advise basically how ISC2 is doing business, extending beyond the board of directors. We know that's their role, but we're more boots on the ground, if you will. Again, not to say the board of directors aren't, but just more viewpoints to be able to help guide what they're looking for. For example, should we have an AI cybersecurity certification?
Mm-hmm.
is a
Very
topic that's now coming up because there's so much to learn about AI and cybersecurity. I actually did a presentation on it beginning of this year, and I put my research out on my GitHub, and there's like 20 references for it. So
nice.
lots of really cool things to learn about it.
Yeah, I'm actually getting ready to do a talk in a couple weeks on generative AI and LLMs in healthcare and
Ooh,
security concerns.
yeah.
And, it's one of those ones, and I'm sure you are probably running into the same thing where you're kind of like, well, we want to look at it from a security perspective, but it's not all doom and gloom.
No,
But at the same time, you got to really be aware of, like, what's the balance of saying, hey, look, there's a huge potential benefit here. Like, there's
yes,
no denying the
yeah,
potential. However, be aware that it could be misused. You've got, um, I think one of the things I'd be interested to get your take on this. One of the things that I found in my research is the National Institute for the Health is saying not to use hallucinations as the
mhm.
attack name because it has a negative connotation for health.
Ooh, that's a good point.
I'm right. I was like,
Yeah,
oh, I
yes,
never thought of
yeah,
that. So they're saying AI misinformation
yeah,
is which okay, I get that. And there's not quite the same impact to it, but it's an
right.
interesting thing that you don't necessarily take into consideration from a security perspective. And I don't know what have you found in that you've been interested or in your research that's kind of like caught your eye or opened your eyes.
Well, going back to our Groundhog Day, is that we've been dealing with AI for how many years? It's just because of ChatGPT becoming a lot more easier to use, a lot more prominent, now being embedded as a part of many other parts of the infrastructure. Better usability is now driving its use. And yes, it's got a ton of great uses. I remember presenting about the internet 20 years ago about protecting kids online. And some parents, well, I just won't let my kids on the internet. It's like, no, it's a great tool.
Right.
Um, as a part of education, some educators are scared to death. Are my students going to cheat using it? I'm like, I have an assignment. I teach an enabling technologies undergrad class, and I have the students actually use it. But they also have to tell me what they think of the results. And 90% of the time they say, okay, yeah, if I want just a C, if I just need something, yeah. But you really need to take the output and still massage it because
Right.
it's too
Well,
generic.
and let's be honest, cheating's been around. If they're going to cheat, they're going to cheat, right? What were
Yes.
the little book summary like?
Oh yeah.
I
Yep.
remember that. So I had definitely had friends that use that. If they're going to cheat, they're going to cheat. But
Right.
like, I think you're dead on. Like, teaching them how to use it properly is the
Mhm.
better,
Yeah.
like, long term option.
Same thing within a business. Department of Homeland Security just published their AI policies. So if any organizations are looking for one to use as a guideline for theirs, look at what Department of Homeland Security and CISA are building towards this. And just setting some ground rules. Again, don't have to be really strict, but just don't use it for anything super sensitive. I don't use one of the AI resume builders as an
Mm,
example because I don't want my resume to be used as part of their training data.
right. Yep. It was funny. I had a call earlier today with a customer group, and they were asking about Microsoft Copilot, and like, who's using it? And I was like, let's be honest, Microsoft already has all our data anyway. Like, I mean, if you're using SharePoint and
Yeah.
OneDrive and Teams, I'm almost a little bit, and now not a an endorsement by any means, but I'm almost a little more comfortable having a siloed AI with
Mm,
they already have my data than throwing something into a chat GPT that doesn't have any of my corporate data,
right.
and am I potentially exposing something that didn't
Hmm.
exist versus we already know they're housing all this, and what's the flip side of it? So
Right. And Microsoft does have the rules around how they're using it, to some extent. Now, anything can be misused.
right.
Discussion on LinkedIn right now about the insider threat and insiders creating fraud. I mean, there's always that. But yeah, it's kind of pick your poison. However, yeah, and be aware. if you're not paying for it, you're the product.
Yep.
Especially true with AI. Use
Hmm.
my free AI. Well, yeah, that's because I want your data. Um, but yeah, it's just being aware. And that's true for whether we're talking AI or anything regarding cybersecurity. And that's why that diligence is so key. Complacency being an enemy of security, which I know Evan talks about in his book, Unsecurity. Shameless
Yeah.
plug there.
Yeah. Yes. Unsecurity. Weird. I don't know where
Yeah, where'd I
I
hear
got
that
that
from?
name.
Yep.
Um, and that's interesting too, because I just had this conversation of cloud security and why is the cloud now such a huge target. I think,
Mm-hmm.
oh shoot, one of the big names, maybe it was Rapid7 or one, I can't remember who it was, just came out, and from 2022 to 2023, cloud attacks were up like
Mm-hmm.
120%. Well, because people offload and go from, I really have to focus and secure my
Mm-hmm.
stuff in house to, oh, it's the cloud, it's safe.
Yeah.
And
It,
it's not.
it's like why rob a bank? Well, that's where the money is. Why go after the cloud? Well, that's where the data is, and it's being migrated. Organizations and so many still don't understand their responsibility when it
Right.
comes to software as a service or any of the type of cloud infrastructure. It still is on the organization to take their steps for securing it. Microsoft, while they do have security by default,
It's
they're not responsible for securing your stuff. You still are.
right. Look at the CIS benchmark for
Mm-hmm.
securing 365 and then
Mm-hmm.
compare that to what is there by default. And
Yes.
it's going to be eye opening for you if you haven't paid attention.
Yes. On that, so are you familiar with CISA Scuba?
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's really kind of cool. So, talking about so many organizations are on Microsoft 365, formerly known as Office 365. Well, CISA, their Scuba product, it's free, is a baseline for both the
Okay.
Microsoft Office suite and the Google suite. So, if you're looking to automate how do I baseline my Office suite, check out what CISA
Nice.
provides. I've actually been really impressed with the direction CISA is going in terms of providing numerous tools and worksheets available at no cost. They're doing it for federal agencies and American consumers, but it's really available for almost anybody.
Yeah. And, I know Evan has had some disagreements with CISA, which fair
Hmm.
enough. Everybody's allowed
Yeah.
to. I think overall they've been a net positive, and
Oh,
and
yeah.
obviously you could nitpick, and it's going to be political because it's the government in terms of
Hmm.
not what Evan's saying or anything, but just within
Hmm.
CISA there is politics. They're in. It's
Everywhere. Yeah.
reality,
Yep.
and but coming out with when NIST just came out with the CSF 2.0, like there's a
Hmm.
lot of positive things I feel like coming out. It's just
Yes.
they're very haphazard. Maybe they seem to be just all over the place.
So Grace Murray Hopper, the luminary in computer science, said the wonderful thing about standards is there are so many to choose from. Very true in cybersecurity. Again, my focal point is zero trust, and there are 10 different federal directions for zero trust just within the US federal government. Yes, if we can get them to talk to each other, I wouldn't have a job. No, just kidding. Um, that's where you use them as guidance and as
Mhm.
tools to building your security architecture.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's great. Yeah, there's so many out there that can
Yeah,
be almost be overwhelming. So yeah,
very much.
find some that are known, trustworthy.
Hmm.
Typically, it's hard to be found at fault if you're following the government.
Yes.
Especially if you're a regulated industry.
Hmm.
Probably a good idea to follow what they've put out. But yeah, there's a lot of really good ones out there. And
Hmm.
reality is, I don't know. Gosh, gut is 90% of it overlaps. There's
Hmm.
really, I mean, the
Hmm.
foundational piece is so much the
Yes.
same. It's okay, CMMC. Well, that's very targeted towards CUI, FCI. Then you
Right.
have, the CSF, which is more critical infrastructure, and now is opened up a little bit more. But where you have 853 and 171, that's defense contractors, right? Like, they have their own nuances and specialties, but the reality is when you look at them, it's almost all like even
Mhm.
ISO standards. It's all so
Oh yeah,
simple.
payment card industry data security
Yeah.
standard, yes. So for those who may be new to cybersecurity watching this, CMMC, capability maturity model, something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's for controlled unclassified information
Yes.
within primarily Department of Defense, CSF, cybersecurity framework, yes, bookmark, NIST cybersecurity framework. I think those were the major ones. I
Yep.
encourage anyone who's new, when you hear these TLAs, three-letter acronyms, to look them up, become curious about them. What does this really mean? Because we as security folks will just keep spewing them out, assuming everyone speaks our language.
I was gonna say, well, and I tend to be a little bit less aware or conscious of it on the podcast because it is more of a targeted. But you're dead on. And when you hear them, when you hear us doing those like rapid fire, that's like, oh, that should be a trigger to go. Well, that's probably something I need to know.
Yes. I have a colleague I work with, very junior in technology and cybersecurity, fresh out of college, and we'll be on a meeting, and she's always chatting me. Okay, what's this? And I really encourage her
That's
to
awesome.
do that. Yeah, yeah, and I just provide the quick definition, and great
A
learning
resource,
opportunity.
something like that.
Yeah,
I love it when the junior people or
yeah,
maybe inexperienced get in, they reach out because
yes.
like
You
I
have to
don't know.
start
Well,
some.
this is a good segue. I didn't
Yeah.
really have that kind of mentor because,
Hmm.
right, I came up, my first job, I've said it, I started in computers in 98. I started
Hmm.
doing Y2K updates with a floppy disk.
Yep.
That was my first IT job, right? Like, so
Yeah.
back then, security really was very,
Still new.
yeah,
Yeah.
very new. I didn't have those people. So for me, that's a big reason why I do the mentor program and I've
Yes.
done mentoring at high schools and things like that is I don't give back that opportunity that
Hmm.
I'm going back and going, man, I would have killed to have somebody explain this stuff. What
Yes.
about you? What is your kind of what's
The-
driving you into volunteering so much of your
right.
time?
So I gotta be honest with you, Brad. I want to retire
No, there you go.
someday.
I like
you
that.
know, So I don't want to be doing cybersecurity into my 70s. I want to make sure I can hand it off to capable folks. So I figured the best way to do it, pay it forward, get them trained, have them be smarter than me, and that way I can step away and live in Mexico next to Evan.
I I can fully endorse that vision. I like that.
Yeah. It kind of comes
Um,
back to the with them, what's in it for me. No,
yeah,
and that really is it. I love the light bulb moments when you see people, all of a sudden they get it.
yes,
And encryption all of a sudden makes sense because it's so math based, but you can really demathify it, coin a
yeah.
phrase, to be able to explain how it's used and how we're continually using it. So it's just those little light bulb moments mean so much to me with
And
any learners.
and what I found is in the group that I guess I've surrounded myself with because I'm like you, I'm a lifetime like that's why I got into IT and then security is I need that challenge. I
Hmm.
want that constant, like, okay, what's next? What do I have to learn? Like, okay, CM or NIST CSF 2.0. I want to look at that and
Hmm.
understand it and be able to say, okay, here are the, like, so that constant
Yeah.
learning and ingesting it. And I found like, even with an Evan who I look up to as a mentor, we were
Yeah.
talking and he went, oh, and had a light bulb moment. It's because
It
it's that
does happen both
personality.
ways.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that teaching of and yeah, that really is like
Yes, I
so
can't tell you how many
satisfying to go.
students I've learned from. Shh,
Yes,
don't tell them. Anyway, no, it's
yeah,
all
that's why you're not naming names.
right. No, it's all good. And that's just being open to learning is so key, even as a teacher.
Yes,
Yeah. Because again, together we are stronger is one of my taglines I love. So,
yeah, I've told it, and I'm sure she knows who it is, but I'm not going to say names because I don't want to give too big a head because she still works here. But she came in as an associate, and
mm,
we were working on a project, and she goes, "Well, what about this?" And I went,
mhm.
"Whoa,
Yeah.
I'd never even considered that.
Yeah.
That's incredible." So, um, what advice would you have for somebody who's listening who's going, well, I'm in IT or
Hmm.
whatever their field is, but this really sounds interesting. How do they get started in security?
Start with whatever you have around you and start by being curious. So the two things, just learn from everyone, everywhere, everything. Dive in deep if there's something you're not familiar with. We've mentioned zero trust, so look it up and see all the resources available out about that particular topic. Joining a group like we have here, be part of that community, whether it's this group, which can be international, or ISC2, ISACA, ISSA, are all really good groups where you can meet folks, and you can build those relationships over time, and whether it's mentor, mentee, or other types. Establish your own home lab as well. You can run Windows subsystem for Linux on Windows 11. I set that up like a month ago, and it's really slick. So now I can just open a command prompt and get right to an Ubuntu Linux prompt. So, because sometimes you want to grep something, you can't do it natively in Windows. And if you don't know what grep is, look it up for those who are.
I know. Oh my gosh. Some of the stuff when they did that, I was like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to fire up a VM every time I want to do this.
Right.
And then try and transfer stuff across. And I like the new sudo stuff that they put into Windows. That's like
you don't have to run as admin all the time. Yeah.
Right. And for those that don't know, sudo is basically a super user, right? And by default, nothing can run that changes the system without that, when it requires a special prompt and password. And so much more secure. It's like, thank goodness.
It's a speed bump to keep us from doing silly things.
Well, it will slow us down. It doesn't change from it. It slows us down.
That's true, but it gets you to think about it. When you're talking. So I was working as a Unix sysadmin, and this was 25 years ago, one of the developers, or all of the developers, had actually root access on our development Linux servers, Unix servers. And of course, one was cleaning up and did rm-r star. And we got to practice our business continuity and disaster recovery that day, pulling from backups. So just having that, again, the speed bump, are you sure you want to do this?
Right. It's such a saving grace for that. And again, but the reality is, it goes back to what we were talking about. It's the basics.
Yeah.
It's the fundamentals of checks and balances and making sure that, you're not, I kind of tie it to like IR. If you're going too fast to document, you're going too fast.
Right.
Like it's the same thing. If you're coding and you don't have time to realize what you're doing, or you're throwing in commands faster than you can you're like second.
Brad, documentation is a 4-letter word.
I'm not saying I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong.
No, I know. And this is actually a positive use for AI potentially. It can help with that documentation. But yes, for those who are new, learn documentation, because so many don't like to do it. You're filling a gap.
Again, once it saves you one time, you realize the value.
Oh, yes. When you have your own checklist, it's like, how did I do that before? You pull it out and you can remind yourself. So you're documenting actually, so the future you can thank the present you.
Right. So I'm sure you can relate to this. I remember going through disaster recovery testing, and we would do it quarterly. Mm-hmm. And because we had a huge environment at the time, and it just wasn't realistic to do it all in one. So we would pick something, an application, whatever it is. And after the second or third time of going, I was like, oh, yes, I get this. And that next time it was like the restore of, I think whatever it was, the AD and the supporting one. And they were like, how come this took like 4 hours and the last time it took like 2 days? I'm like, we figured out what we did wrong. Totally. We didn't fight the same battle every time.
Automating. Yep, becoming more efficient.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. So another quick tip for those looking to break into cybersecurity, whether you're moving from an IT career or from outside of more of the technology career fields. Again, start with your local environment. Help secure maybe a local community. It could be a religious organization, church, synagogue, mosque. They often need someone to help guide them in cybersecurity, and you can volunteer and say, can you be a reference for me for doing this? Helping seniors secure their stuff. Many seniors are very unaware, so go to a local center and help advise. And again, say, hey, I can help you. Can you just be a reference? And this builds your credibility. CTFs are another great way to practice the technology. I capture the flag competitions. a lot of fun, gamification of cybersecurity. So
Yeah,
and you can put all of those on your resume.
and there's some really good ones out there too. I mean, even if you're looking at going back and not competing in an active
Mhm.
one, if you're looking from an IR blue team perspective, Cyber Defenders has some phenomenal ones. And quite frankly, it's what I use because I don't do incident response on a regular
Mhm.
basis. So leading up to DEF CON, just to get your mind thinking about it, I'll fully admit I go back and do during lunches leading up to it just to change, get back into the thought. Hack the Box, that's another good one. I mean, there's just
Mhm.
so many good ones out there that
Agreed.
if you want the experience and you just are interested in seeing what it's like, go do them. And
Yeah.
doing is probably, to me, doing is the best way of learning. And then
Yeah.
to me, and then teaching, and that teaching is reinforcing
Yes.
and just keeping it there. So
Well, with a CTF, you have to document what you're doing as well.
right,
You have to have your CTF write up. So it's, yeah, great practice. You can go practice yourself and just do it for the experience, not to see if you can win, because it's really
no,
is a nice community too.
oh yeah,
Those who are participating, they're going to have some really gung ho folks who they want to win, but majority are just there to use it as a learning experience and as a fun engagement.
and yeah, and just to keep their skills up, because
Yeah.
let's be honest, incident response work is kind of up and down. There's going to be
Hmm.
lulls. And so, yeah, let's just say we had the Screen Connect. Well, maybe
Yeah.
somebody puts out a CTF. We haven't seen it yet. I have no idea. I'm just saying. You
Yep.
haven't seen the Screen Connect, but you're a blue teamer. Well, maybe you go find a Screen Connect CTF and know what to look
Yeah.
for. And that's a heck of a lot easier and less stressful than looking in your production environment.
Exactly. Yeah. Practice on the play field, if you will,
Yes.
is a great
So
way to do it.
awesome. Well, Ron, we're right at at our time. I think this was awesome. One of the things that
Yeah.
we do on all these is we do a shout out. So just a shout out to somebody or a group of people that you're just like,
Oh.
hey, great job. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you have a shout out for anyone?
So I'm a military veteran, so I'm always shouting out veterans of cybersecurity. There's multiple different groups. It's a great way. As a veteran, we have a brotherhood, sisterhood, where we get together. So just join your local communities as well. So for me, it's VetSec and ISC2 and ISACA.
Nice. And I'm gonna give a shout out, and if they listen, they'll know who they are. I can't really say the name, but it's a K through 12 that has
Hmm.
a cybersecurity and kind of an ethical hacking
Ah.
track for kind of like it's not for everyone. You
Mhm.
have to get your way into it, but it's phenomenal to see that they're, like you said, getting
Yes.
ahead of the curve and, helping kids that,
Catch the hackers young. Yes.
yes, let's put them on the good side before
Yes.
they get into trouble. So
Exactly.
if you're
That's
listening,
great.
shout out
Yes.
to you. I think you know who you are.
Awesome.
Great. Well, Ron, thank you so much for being the second in our Meet the Mentors program. We'll be keep you
My
going in a
pleasure.
couple of weeks, and I think we've got a couple more coming up. So, and then program starts April. Now I know this. I knew this, and now I forgot.
I don't have it up either.
April 8th.
Okay. Ooh,
So
in a
coming up
month.
here in a month. So we'll be talking with you then.
Sounds great, Brad, as always. My pleasure.
All right. Thank you, everyone.